What is up, Sleep Tribe? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Healthy Sleep Revolution podcast. I am your host, Dr. Meghna Dassani, and we are going to continue on our journey that is called Airway is Life. Before we get into our next set of information, I quickly want to say thank you to our sponsors, Thrive Therapeutics, for the 5-in-1 calming gummies. I'm a huge fan, played a role in actually helping develop it, and no melatonin. That's why I love these so much. We want natural remedies to be able to help lower cortisol levels to help our kids' bodies calm down, unwind, and just get to a better level of sleep. Moving on with Airway is Life. Today, we're going to talk about how sleep builds our brains. Mike's mom was at her wit's end. Her 10-year-old son was struggling on multiple fronts at school. He was diagnosed with dyslexia, but interventions didn't seem to be helping, and he kept falling further behind. He couldn't focus on his work. He wasn't able to memorize information. He seemed to have trouble processing when people talked to him, and his emotions were all up and down and all over the place. As a result, he was always in trouble and was starting to think of himself as a bad kid. After a screening, we sent him for an evaluation with the ENT. He had a tonsillectomy and an adenectomy and got treatment for previously undiagnosed sinus and allergy issues. Suddenly, he was a different kid. He was still dyslexic, of course, but he was finally making progress because his sleep improved and he could actually learn. His moods leveled out, and so he was in trouble less and could handle frustration. He started being able to get along with peers. And for the first time in his life, Mike actually enjoyed school. He had never been a bad kid. He'd been a sleep-deprived kid, and he was finally getting the rest he needed to learn and to grow. Sleep gives our body a chance to rest and recuperate from the day, but it doesn't mean that we're not doing anything. We burn about 82% of the calories burned in an hour watching TV in an hour of sleep. How can that be when we're not doing anything? Well, not only do our baseline metabolic activities continue, but our brains are actually hard at work. Sleep isn't a break from brain activity. Instead, it's a shift in the kinds of brain activity. During the day, we're constantly taking in information and learning new things about our environments, even if we're no longer students. We're seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, and tasting all sorts of things. We're moving, sometimes in familiar ways, but often in new ways. We're constantly interacting with other people, either in person or online, or even through our television. All day long, we're filling up our short memory with all of these facts, details, and impressions. So how can we constantly be interacting and learning without breaking down? We sleep. When we sleep, our brain shifts from a focus on collecting information to a focus on processing information. When we process little bits here and there during the day, nighttime is when the real work gets done. Sleep does so many things for the mind. It makes it possible to learn new things. It stores new knowledge. It helps you practice motor skills. It helps you forget unimportant details. It helps process strong emotions. It rewires the brain when necessary due to growth, injury, or new skills. It helps us solve difficult problems. It makes us more creative. How much time your brain spends in each activity changes as you grow. However, at every stage of life, sleep is essential for brain function, building the brain before birth and during infancy. Sleep is so important that humans begin sleeping at about 23 weeks gestational age, right as they start a period of very fast brain growth and development. 23 weeks is also around the age that high-level NICUs can treat a premature baby. In the womb, sleep is classified differently than it is in the sleep lab. Until the very end of pregnancy, the baby will sleep about 24 hours a day, with 6 hours of non-REM sleep, 6 hours of REM sleep, and 12 hours of another stage that scientists haven't clearly defined yet. This is a time of rapid brain growth. The brain is creating and connecting neurons and wiring itself for the massive amount of learning that happens right from the moment of birth. For a full-term infant, the last 2 weeks before birth see a shift. The baby is still asleep most of the time, but starts getting 9 to 12 hours a day of REM sleep as the process of connecting neurons goes into overdrive. Does the amount of REM matter to such a small person? Yes. Studies of preemies have found that babies who get more REM sleep are healthier. They spend more time growing and eating, less time crying, and more time focused and alert. 6 months down the road, babies who get less REM sleep in the NICU have more neurological problems. It's unclear whether this is causation, lack of REM causes neurological problems, or correlation. Babies with neurological problems also have dysfunctional REM sleep. But it's certain that the work done in REM sleep is important for long-term brain development. Scientists have done experiments where they disrupt only the REM sleep of a group of newborn rats and then compare them to their peers. In these cases, the rats who undergo a few weeks of REM sleep disruption at a young age have brains that are wired in weird ways, and they grow up to be isolated, antisocial adult rats. So even at very young ages, healthy, uninterrupted sleep with periods for REM matters to the brain. Sleep clears a path to learning. Have you ever had to do a task that was difficult, new, and took a lot of thinking? Your brain probably felt fried. You were done with heavy thinking for the day and could only do mindless things. But then you woke up the next morning ready to tackle mentally challenging things again. What happened? When you think hard, you learn new things. The part of your brain called the hypothalamus stores this new knowledge. But there's a problem. Your hypothalamus is sort of like the entryway of your brain. New information comes in the door and gets dropped off there, just like your family drops mail and coats and backpacks and groceries. After a while, it gets cluttered. There's no room for new things until the old stuff has been examined, sorted, and either thrown out or stored in proper place. In sleep, the brain cleans out the hypothalamus and moves the new information to permanent storage. Waves of electricity pulse across the brain, and as this happens, new memories get moved to the appropriate parts of the brain. Facts, motor skills, things you've seen and need to recognize later, and social interactions all get moved to places where you can find them later. This is like when you hang the coats in the closet, move the groceries to the refrigerator, sort the mail and put the bills on the desk, and put the backpacks on their hooks after going through them to make sure there were no report cards or permission slips that needed to be signed. After your work is done, your house is organized and your front hall is clean and ready to start the new day. When your brain does work during sleep, the hypothalamus is cleaned out and ready to go too. If you don't get enough good sleep, and especially that non-REM sleep, the hypothalamus does not get totally cleaned out. You can't learn new things and you're stuck. This is also why people who are learning a lot very quickly often need naps. Have you ever watched a baby in an interesting and engaging environment, like a walk around the neighborhood? For a while, they're focused and busy, learning all they can about their environment. Trees, ducks, cars, dogs, they're all so interesting. But then suddenly, that kid is out like a light. They sleep for a while, wake up happy, and are interested again. What happened? The baby's hypothalamus was full to the brim with new experiences and ideas, and they needed a nap to clear it out. After that nap, they're awake and ready to learn more. Researchers have seen a similar nap effect with college students. A group that was allowed to nap after learning new material was able to learn and retain more after the nap than the group that wasn't permitted to nap. Since sleep clears the way for new learning, it makes sense to make good, uninterrupted sleep a priority, especially for people who want to go to school or have mentally taxing jobs. If we want people ready to take on new challenges every day, we need to make sure they slept the night before. Sleep stores new knowledge for easy recall. Sleep is also important once you've learned things. While your brain is cleaning out that entryway, it is also processing and sorting the information it finds, just like you sort things in your house for storage. Holiday decorations go out to the garage, out-of-season clothes to the attic, gardening tools to the tool shed. You don't look for a rake in the attic, and you don't expect to find the lights in the shed, except sometimes if you don't have enough time to sort as you put things away, they may end up in the wrong places. And then they either get permanently lost or they're harder to find. This can happen with insufficient sleep as well. Studies done on elderly people find that those who have interrupted sleep have impaired memory a full decade before people who sleep well. Those forgotten appointments or errands can be a sign that you're not getting enough sleep to put new information where it actually needs to go. These things are literally slipping your mind because you need deep, uninterrupted sleep to store them properly. This affects children too. For instance, in studies of kids with dyslexia, the children who have more sleep spindles, this is a feature of uninterrupted non-REM stages 2, 3, and 4 sleep, are better readers than the children who don't have as many sleep spindles. This makes sense because a hack many dyslexics use in learning to read is memorizing the appearance of whole words to make up for the lack of phonics processing. The more whole words the dyslexic can memorize, the better they can read. And sleep is essential for transferring these new memorized words to the appropriate part of the brain. Now, sleep can't cure dyslexia, but a lack of sleep can make it impossible for a child to develop coping mechanisms for working around their processing disorder. Sleep helps the brain learn new muscle skills. Think about all the things you can do almost without thinking: walking, riding a bike, driving, writing with a pen or a pencil, typing, playing an instrument. These are all things adults do without thinking about the discrete steps that go into every motion. But they are incredibly complex activities. And at one time in your life, they were hard. They were new skills, and you had to concentrate while you did them. When we talk about these things that become automatic, we like to talk about muscle memory. But really, your muscles can't think or remember. They're moving in these familiar patterns because of signals from your brain. And your brain has practiced and remembered these patterns for so long that you no longer have to try and recall them. You see a word and you type it out. You pluck out a familiar song on the piano. You sign your name on a paper. You drive to work and sing along with the radio. You walk around the block, stop to chat with a neighbor, and start walking again. Much of your day is easy and automatic, and you have sleep to thank for it. When you've learned a new motor skill, the brain rehearses it during sleep. EEGs of sleepers who have learned new motor skills have activity in the motor cortex of the brain, that part that is responsible for movement. This means that the brain is running through those motions again and again, even as the body lies motionless. Researchers have found that this activity happens most in the last 2 hours of an 8-hour stretch of sleep. It's not enough to just practice a lot during the day. People learning new motor skills need to practice during the day and then get a full 8 hours of sleep after their practice. Athletes who make sure to sleep a full night perform better and have fewer injuries than athletes who stint on sleep. Musicians who sleep a full night learn pieces faster and they play better. If you want your children to learn to ride a bike sooner, to type and write better, and to be less clumsy, perhaps you should ensure that they get enough sleep. The fact that motor memory happens at the end of sleep also has an important bearing on teen safety. Our teens are learning to drive, which means they have to quickly learn a host of new motor skills: gas and brakes, steering, turn signals, driving routes. It's all just complicated. Just pulling out of a parking space uses so many muscle motion. When our teens are shortchanged on sleep, they're missing out on the brain activity that is necessary to make them better drivers. They're more at risk for deadly accidents, or at least fender benders. This need for those last 2 hours of sleep may also explain why the elderly are so prone to fall injuries. As people age, they often have trouble staying asleep as long. If they're not getting a full 8 hours, their brain isn't practicing motor skills as much, and that can lead to increased clumsiness. With frailer bodies, falls are more dangerous and can lead to painful injuries that cut sleep time even more. Lack of sufficient sleep is dangerous. Sleep helps us forget unimportant details. When your brain stores memories for easy access in sleep, it also performs another important job. It forgets things. You take in information all day. Some of it is important, like the dosing schedule for a new medicine or an article about when your street is finally going to be repaired. But a lot of information isn't worth remembering. What did the car in front of you look like at the drive-thru? Now, unless you got into an accident, you probably don't remember. How many pieces of junk mail did you get? And what was the price of that shirt you had no intention of buying? Who needs that sort of information cluttering up their thinking? By making important information easy to access and erasing the useless stuff, sleep helps you think more quickly and focus on the task in front of you. That old information isn't erased right away, though, which means there is a window of a few days where you can choose to make sure information stays put. How? Repetition. If you need a fact over and over, your sleeping brain is more likely to put it where you can actually access it quickly. The first time something happens, new events are remembered more than repeats. So you might remember the first time you met someone with perfect clarity, and some of the more recent meetings, but the middle might be a little bit fuzzy. Unusual things. We go through a lot of our lives looking for patterns and encountering familiar things. So when something is weird, it sticks out and our brain hangs on to it. Very emotional events. Psychologically, healthy people only feel strong emotion about important things. So important emotion tags a memory as important. Cause and effect. Your brain remembers things that have a strong cause and effect link because those are important memories. Things like, if I drive 75 on this road, I will get pulled over, are important to remember. Do you have something you most certainly do not want to forget? Try using one of those above reasons for remembering to hang on to it. Most of what you encounter in the day won't have one of these important memory tags. And so within a few days, that memory will degrade until you can't remember whether it was a white SUV or a red sedan in front of you at that stoplight last week. You're just sure it wasn't a horse and a buggy, because that would have been worth remembering. We will continue with Airway is Life and its chapters in our next episode. As always, if you know somebody that could benefit from this information, from this knowledge, somebody that could sleep better, do with more quality sleep, and just doesn't know what's missing, share this podcast with them. As always, leave us a review, and I will see you next time.